The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched beyond what most minds could imagine. 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle, their forms as different as night and day. Some looked like living crystals that sang when they moved. Others appeared as giant insects with wings that shimmered like oil on water. A few were made of pure energy, glowing and shifting in forms that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Korath of the Vorthark stood at the center of the hall, his crystal body caught the light from 1,000 stars visible through the transparent dome above them. When he spoke, his voice rang like bells across the chamber. The emergency meeting had been called because of one simple problem that was growing. Bigger each day, humans, the species had appeared seemingly from nowhere just 50 years ago. They had developed faster than light travel and started spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. At first, the Council had watched with mild interest. New species always showed up eventually. Most of them were easy to control. They would see the power of the Council and submit without question. Humans were different. Korath activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Images of human ships, cities, and soldiers appeared in the air. The other council members leaned forward to study these strange new creatures. Humans looked soft and weak. They had no natural armor, no claws, no ability to survive in space without protection. Yet somehow they had built ships that could cross the galaxy. The insectoid representative, Commander Zekth, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. He had seen thousands of species rise and fall over his long life. Humans looked no different from any other primitive race that thought it could challenge the established order. Their weapons were simple kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. Their ships were held together with metal and hope. Their technology was at least 1,000 years behind Council standards. Nexus 7, the artificial intelligence that served as the Council's chief strategist, projected its analysis into the minds of all present. The calculations were simple and clear. Human military strength was negligible. Their total fleet numbered less than 300 ships spread across dozens of systems. Their ground forces used projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their defensive capabilities consisted of simple energy shields that any Council weapon could penetrate with ease. The probability of human victory in any conflict with Council forces was calculated at exactly 0.03%. Even that small number was considered generous by most standards. The margin of error in the calculations was larger than the chance of human success. What troubled the Council was not human military might but human attitude. Unlike every other species they had encountered, humans seemed completely unimpressed by Council authority. They had been offered the standard junior membership package that all new species received. Limited trade rights, restricted travel permits, and the privilege of paying tribute to maintain galactic peace. Every other species had accepted these terms gratefully. Humans had not only rejected the offer, but had demanded full membership with equal voting rights. They wanted to know why some species were allowed to have advanced weapons while others were not. They questioned why the Council decided which worlds could be colonized and which must remain empty. Most shocking of all, they had suggested that the Council's methods of maintaining peace were outdated and unfair. The energy being known as flux spoke without words, its thoughts flowing directly into the minds of the others. It had been studying human communications and found their behavior patterns concerning. Humans showed no proper respect for established authority. They seemed to believe that being right was more important than maintaining order. Such thinking was dangerous and could spread to other species if not corrected quickly. Commander Jake Morrison had been Earth's chief negotiator during the failed diplomatic talks. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. When the Council had explained that humans must accept junior status for at least 500 years before being considered for full membership, Morrison had simply shaken his head. He had stood before the assembled alien leaders without fear or hesitation. His voice had been calm but firm when he explained that humanity would not accept second-class status in their own galaxy. Humans had developed faster than light travel on their own. They had established colonies and trade routes without Council permission. They had earned their place among the stars through their own efforts and would not bow to anyone. The council members had been stunned by such audacity. No species had ever spoken to them in such a manner. Morrison had made it clear that humans were willing to negotiate as equals but would never submit as servants. When the council had insisted on their traditional terms, Morrison had delivered what could only be described as a threat. He had told them that humanity understood the council's position but hoped they would reconsider. Earth wanted peace but would not purchase it with their freedom. If the council chose to use force to impose their will, they would find humans far more difficult to defeat than their calculations suggested. The human diplomat had then gathered his papers, nodded politely to each council member, and walked out of the chamber. The insult still burned in the minds of every council member present. No species had ever simply walked away from council authority. The proper response was clear to all of them. Humans needed to be taught their place in the galactic order. A quick demonstration of council power would bring them to their senses. A small enforcement fleet would be sufficient to make the point. Admiral Korath began issuing orders for the mobilization of 500 council warships. The force was far larger than necessary to defeat human resistance, but it would send a clear message to any other species that might be watching. The council's authority would not be questioned. Their decisions were final. Their power was absolute. The other council members agreed that swift action was necessary. Humans had been given every chance to accept reasonable terms. They had chosen defiance over wisdom. The enforcement fleet would demonstrate the folly of opposing established galactic authority. After their defeat, humans would be grateful to accept whatever terms the council offered. As the meeting ended, none of the council members noticed the small probe that had been watching from beyond their sensor range. None of them realized that every word of their discussion had been recorded and transmitted across space at faster than light speed. The message reached Earth long before the council fleet would arrive, carrying news that would change everything. The message from the hidden probe reached Earth's command center 3 hours before the Galactic Council finished their meeting. Deep beneath the Colorado Mountains, in a facility that officially did not exist, alarms began sounding. President Lisa Carter was pulled from a cabinet meeting and rushed to the underground complex that had been her real office for the past 2 years. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, passing through layers of rock and steel until it reached the true heart of Earth's government. The War Room was not the pretty conference chamber that appeared on television. It was a massive underground facility filled with screens, computers, and the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. General Rick Hayes was waiting when the elevator doors opened. He was a broad man with silver hair and scars that spoke of battles fought in places the public would never know existed. His face was grim as he handed the president a datapad containing the intercepted council transmission. Carter read it twice before looking up at the assembled military leaders. The room was filled with people who had been preparing for this moment for decades. Admiral Ben Clark commanded Earth's real space fleet, the one that existed in the shadows beyond public knowledge. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had spent 20 years developing weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science. Colonel Dan Murphy oversaw the black operations that kept humanity's secrets safe from alien eyes. President Carter looked around the room at the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to this single purpose. Earth's public military was exactly what it appeared to be, a collection of conventional forces designed to handle earthbound threats. The real defense of humanity lay in the hands of people whose names would never appear in history books. The timeline was clear and unforgiving. The Council enforcement fleet would arrive in 18 hours. They would expect to find a primitive world defended by outdated weapons and desperate courage. Instead, they would encounter the result of 50 years of careful planning and technological development that had been hidden from every alien probe and sensor. Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of humanity's capabilities. While aliens had been watching Earth's conventional military through their surveillance networks, they had completely missed the shadow infrastructure that humanity had been building since the day they detected their first alien signal. The development had begun in the 1970s when Earth's radio telescopes detected structured signals from space. Instead of announcing the discovery, a secret group of scientists and military leaders had made a different choice. They decided that humanity would be ready when contact finally came. The public continued to search for signs of alien life while the real work happened in hidden laboratories and secret bases. Crashed alien probes had provided the foundation for everything that followed. Over the decades, 13 different alien artifacts had been recovered from various crash sites around the world. Each one had been carefully studied and reverse-engineered in facilities that did not appear on any map. The technology gleaned from these artifacts had allowed human science to leap forward by centuries in just a few decades. Admiral Clark's fleet consisted of 200 warships that had never appeared in any public record. They were built in orbital shipyards hidden behind carefully positioned asteroids and space debris. Each ship incorporated technology that the Galactic Council did not know existed. Dark matter manipulation allowed them to become completely invisible to any known sensor. Quantum processors gave them computing power that surpassed anything in the galaxy. The weapons were even more impressive. Traditional alien shields were designed to stop energy beams and projectile weapons. They had no defense against quantum torpedoes that could phase between dimensions or neural disruptors that attacked the consciousness of organic crews directly. Most devastating of all were the temporal displacement missiles that could arrive at their target before they were even fired. Colonel Murphy's intelligence network had been watching the Council for decades through methods the aliens never suspected. Human agents had infiltrated alien societies by using advanced camouflage technology that could make a human appear to be any known alien species. The information they gathered had allowed Earth to build weapons specifically designed to exploit every weakness in Council technology. The deception had been perfect. Every alien probe that approached Earth's solar system was allowed to gather exactly the information that humanity wanted them to see. They observed training exercises using deliberately outdated equipment. They recorded conversations between military leaders who were actually actors following carefully written scripts. They analyzed human technology that was designed to appear primitive while hiding capabilities that surpassed their own. Dr. Rodriguez smiled as she explained the crown jewel of human innovation. The consciousness transfer system allowed human minds to control multiple ships simultaneously. A single pilot could coordinate an entire squadron with perfect precision. The technology was based on research into alien neural patterns that had revealed the fundamental differences between human and alien thought processes. Where alien minds were specialized and limited, human consciousness was flexible and adaptable. A human pilot could think like 12 different alien species at the same time, predicting their tactics and countering their strategies before they were even implemented. The advantage was so overwhelming that computer simulations showed human victory even when outnumbered 100 to 1. General Hayes outlined the battle plan that had been refined through thousands of simulations and war games. Operation Daybreak would begin the moment the alien fleet entered the solar system. Hidden weapon platforms throughout the outer planets would target key enemy ships while the invisible human fleet moved into attack positions. The first wave would disable enemy communications and sensors using electromagnetic pulse weapons that had been tuned specifically to alien technology. Blind and deaf, the Council ships would be sitting targets for the second wave of quantum weapons that could penetrate any known defensive system. The third wave would offer surrender terms to any surviving alien vessels. President Carter listened to the briefing with mixed feelings. Part of her was proud of what humanity had accomplished in secret. They had taken 50 years to prepare for a war that might last only minutes. But another part of her wished that diplomacy had worked. She had genuinely hoped that aliens would be different from humans, that they would value cooperation over domination. The choice was no longer hers to make. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity must submit or be destroyed. They believed they were dealing with a primitive species that could be easily intimidated. Their intelligence was so flawed that they had no idea what they were about to face. Admiral Clark requested permission to deploy the fleet to combat positions. President Carter looked around the room one final time before giving the authorization. Code that would change the course of galactic history. Earth's hidden guardians began moving toward their destiny, ready to show the universe that humanity would bow to no one. The Council had made their calculations based on what they could see. They had failed to account for what they could not imagine. In less than 18 hours, they would discover that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology, but their refusal to surrender their freedom to anyone who claimed authority over them. The countdown to Operation Daybreak had begun, and with it, the end of the Galactic Council's 1,000-year reign over the galaxy. The Galactic Council enforcement fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system at exactly 11:36 in the morning. 500 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy hung in the darkness beyond Neptune, their hulls gleaming with the confidence of 1,000 victories over lesser species. Fleet Commander Zix-9 stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the primitive solar system spread out before him. His 4 eyes could see across multiple spectrums of light, revealing details that human vision would miss. The system looked exactly as their intelligence reports had described. A small yellow star surrounded by planets that showed no signs of advanced defensive systems. The alien crews were relaxed as they began their approach toward the inner planets. This was not expected to be a real battle, but rather a demonstration of power designed to bring stubborn humans to their senses. Most of the younger officers had never seen actual combat. They viewed this mission as an opportunity to gain experience. Without real danger, Zix-9 had commanded enforcement actions against 17 different species during his long career. The pattern was always the same. Primitive worlds would make defiant speeches about their independence and freedom. They would posture and threaten until council ships appeared in their skies. Then reality would set in. Faced with overwhelming technological superiority, resistance would collapse within hours or days at most. The first human ships appeared on their sensors as the fleet passed the orbit of Neptune. Long-range scans revealed exactly what the Council had expected to find. 12 small vessels of crude design approached the alien fleet. Their weapons were simple kinetic cannons and primitive missile systems. Their shields registered barely above background levels on alien sensors. Commander Zix-9 opened a communication channel to the human ships. His voice carried the authority of 1,000 worlds as he delivered the standard ultimatum. Humans had one final chance to surrender and accept Council authority. Continued resistance would result in the complete destruction of their military forces and the occupation of their worlds. Captain Steve Miller responded from the lead human ship. His voice was calm and showed no trace of the fear that Zix-9 expected. To hear, Miller explained that Earth had received the Council's terms and found them unacceptable. Humanity would defend its freedom regardless of the odds. The communication channel closed before Zix-9 could respond. The alien commander felt a moment of irritation at human stubbornness but quickly dismissed it. 12 ships against 500 was not a battle, but a massacre. He gave orders for his fleet to disable the human vessels without destroying them. Captured humans would serve as examples to discourage further resistance. At exactly 11:48 in the morning, Earth Standard Time, Admiral Ben Clark gave the order that changed galactic history forever. From his command ship hidden in the asteroid belt, he transmitted a single word across encrypted channels that had been waiting for this moment for 50 years. Daybreak, the solar system exploded into action, as humanity's true military revealed itself. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as asteroids powered up their systems. Stealth ships that had been invisible to alien sensors decloaked throughout the outer planets. Battle stations hidden behind planetary rings activated their defensive screens and targeted the alien fleet. CYX-9 had exactly 3 seconds to realize that everything his intelligence had told him was wrong before the first wave of human attacks reached his fleet. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside alien ships without triggering any defensive systems. The weapons existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making conventional shields useless against them. The torpedoes were not designed to destroy but to disable. They targeted specific systems within each alien ship, knocking out engines, weapons, and communication systems while leaving life support intact. Within the first minute of combat, half the Council fleet found themselves drifting helplessly in space. Unable to fight or flee. Captain Steve Miller's squadron launched their second surprise. Neural warfare systems that had been developed from captured alien technology sent targeted signals directly into the brains of organic crew members and the processing cores of artificial intelligences. Alien crews suddenly found themselves unable to remember how to operate their own ships. Commander Zix-9 watched in horror as his tactical display showed ship after ship going dark. His own vessel shuddered as something that should not have been possible penetrated their shields and struck directly at their main computer core. Emergency systems activated throughout the ship as primary. Control systems failed one after another. The human ships that had appeared so primitive were moving through the alien formation like sharks among minnows. Their weapons seemed to anticipate where alien ships would be rather than where they were. Energy beams arrived at their targets before the human ships had visibly fired them. Missiles changed direction in mid-flight to follow evasive maneuvers that had not yet been attempted. Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched the battle from her command center deep beneath Earth's surface. The temporal displacement weapons were performing exactly as her simulations had predicted. By firing projectiles that traveled backwards through time, human weapons could strike targets before the enemy knew they were under attack. The psychological effect on alien crews was devastating. Admiral Clark's flagship emerged from behind Jupiter's largest moon, leading a squadron of vessels that defied every known law of physics. The ships seemed to be made of solidified darkness, absorbing all light and energy that struck them. When they fired their weapons, reality itself seemed to bend around the beams. The alien fleet attempted to retreat but discovered that human forces had somehow surrounded them completely. Ships that had been nowhere near their escape routes suddenly appeared to block their path. The Council fleet found itself trapped in a sphere of human firepower with no avenue of escape. Zix-9 tried to coordinate a counterattack but found that his communications had been jammed by signals that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. His remaining ships were isolated from each other, unable to work together against an enemy that moved with perfect coordination. The final phase of the battle began at 11:59. Human ships broadcast surrender terms on all frequencies simultaneously. Any alien crew that powered down their weapons and surrendered would be treated according to the laws of war. Those who continued to resist would be disabled and captured. There would be no exceptions. At exactly noon, the last alien ship lowered its shields and powered down its weapons. The battle was over. Total engagement time was 12 minutes from the first shot to final surrender. Human casualties numbered 0. Not a single human ship had been damaged by enemy fire. The Galactic Council's enforcement fleet had been completely neutralized without any human losses. Captain Miller opened a communication channel to the alien survivors. His voice was professional but not unkind as he explained that medical teams would be dispatched to assist any wounded alien personnel. Prison ships would transport alien crews to secure facilities where they would be held until the political situation could be resolved. Commander Zix-9 sat in the wreckage of his command bridge and tried to understand what had happened. His fleet had been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could withstand the energy output of stars. Yet they had been defeated in 12 minutes by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The scope of the deception was becoming clear to him. Humans had not only hidden their true capabilities, but had actively deceived the Council into believing they were weak and vulnerable. Every piece of intelligence the aliens had gathered was false. Every assumption they had made was wrong. The species they had come to conquer had conquered them instead. The silence in the Galactic Council chambers stretched for 37 minutes after the last transmission from their enforcement fleet ended. 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat motionless, trying to process information that challenged everything they believed about the universe and their place in it. Admiral Korath was the first to speak. His crystal form had dimmed to almost complete darkness, a sign of deep shock among his species. His voice, usually strong enough to shake the chamber walls, came out as barely more than a whisper. He demanded to know how their most advanced fleet had been completely destroyed in 12 minutes by a species their intelligence had rated as primitive. The artificial intelligence Nexus 7 ran calculations faster than organic minds could follow. Every probability matrix came back with the same impossible result. Based on observed human capabilities, the outcome should have been mathematically impossible. Yet the quantum communication feeds had shown their mighty fleet being systematically dismantled by weapons that should not have existed. Commander Zek's insectoid form was trembling with a mixture of fear and rage. His species had dominated their region of space for over 1 million years through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. The idea that soft, weak humans could possess weapons beyond Council understanding was so alien to his worldview that he could barely accept it as real. The energy being known as flux projected its confusion into the minds of the other Council members. It had analyzed every recorded human communication and found no trace of the advanced technology they had just witnessed. The deception had been so complete that even beings capable of reading thoughts and emotions had been fooled. Dr. Nexus 7 began presenting its revised analysis of human capabilities. The artificial intelligence had been forced to completely reconstruct its understanding of human society based on the battle footage. What they had assumed was humanity's entire military was revealed to be nothing more than a carefully maintained illusion designed to hide their true strength. The weapons humans had used were centuries beyond anything in Council arsenals. Temporal displacement technology was theoretical even by the most advanced alien standards. Neural warfare systems that could disable entire crews simultaneously had never been successfully developed by any known species. The stealth technology that had hidden human ships from Council sensors was completely unknown to galactic science. More disturbing was the revelation that humans had been watching the Council for decades through methods that remained completely undetected. Every secret meeting, every classified military development, every strategic decision had been observed and recorded by human intelligence networks that had penetrated alien society at the highest levels. Admiral Korath demanded answers from the intelligence chiefs who had assured them of human weakness. The beings responsible for gathering information about emerging species cowered before his rage as they tried to explain how they had been so completely deceived. Their sensor networks had shown them exactly what humans wanted them to see, while the real military buildup happened beyond their ability to detect. The scope of human planning became clear as more battle footage was analyzed. The assault had not been a desperate defense mounted in response to Council threats. It had been a carefully orchestrated operation planned and rehearsed for decades. Every human ship had moved with perfect precision. Every weapon had struck exactly where intended. Every tactical decision had anticipated alien responses before they were made. Dr. Nexus 7 calculated that preparing for such an operation would have required the complete dedication of human society for at least 50 years. While aliens had observed what appeared to be a normal developing civilization, humanity had actually been unified in the single purpose of preparing to defend their freedom against galactic authority. The psychological profiles of human leadership were equally troubling. Instead of the expected panic and desperation, intercepted communications showed complete calm and confidence. President Lisa Carter had addressed her people with words of reassurance rather than calls for desperate resistance. Admiral Ben Clark had issued orders with the casual efficiency of someone conducting a routine training exercise. Commander Zix-9's final transmission before being taken prisoner had provided the most disturbing intelligence of all. He reported that human forces had deliberately avoided destroying alien ships when they could have easily done so. The weapons that had disabled Council vessels were precisely calibrated to neutralize threats without causing unnecessary casualties. This revelation sent shockwaves through the Council chamber. Species that achieved such overwhelming military Superiority typically used it to eliminate all opposition. Humans had demonstrated that they possessed the power to annihilate the entire Council fleet, but had chosen restraint instead. The implications were terrifying to beings accustomed to thinking in terms of absolute domination. Flux projected a new analysis into the minds of the other Council members. Human behavior patterns suggested that their victory had not been motivated by conquest, but by a desire to establish their independence. They had used exactly enough force to prove their point while avoiding the wholesale slaughter that would have made peace impossible. The Council faced a choice that none of them had ever expected to confront. They could attempt to mobilize their remaining forces for a full-scale war against humanity, knowing that their enemy possessed superior technology and had been planning for such a conflict for decades. Or they could acknowledge that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. Admiral Korath's rage gradually gave way to a cold understanding of their new reality. Humans had not simply defeated a Council enforcement fleet. They had demonstrated that everything the Council believed about their own superiority was an illusion. The established order that had governed the galaxy for 1,000 years had ended in 12 minutes of combat. The artificial intelligence Nexus 7 presented the most frightening calculation of all. If humans possessed the technology to defeat their enforcement fleet so easily, what other capabilities might they be hiding? The species that had just humiliated Council forces might have weapons capable of destroying entire star systems or technologies that could remake the fundamental laws of physics. Dr. Nexus 7's probability matrices now showed scenarios that ranged from human conquest of the entire galaxy to the complete dissolution of Council authority. Every possible future involved the end of alien dominance over galactic affairs. The age of Council supremacy was over, ended by a species they had dismissed as unworthy of consideration. Commander Zekth was the first to voice what they were all thinking. The Council had two choices. They could fight a war they could not win against an enemy that had spent 50 years preparing for their attack. Or they could negotiate with humans as equals and try to salvage what they could from the wreckage of their old assumptions. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Galactic Council would request negotiations with a species they had intended to conquer. They would acknowledge human military superiority and ask what terms humanity demanded for peace. The proud alien leaders who had ruled the galaxy for a millennium would humble themselves before the species they had tried to intimidate into submission. As emergency communications were prepared for Earth, none of the Council members could have imagined that humanity's response would surprise them even more than their military capabilities had. President Lisa Carter stood before the same holographic projection system that had once displayed human weakness to alien eyes. 3 days had passed since the 12-minute war that changed everything, and now representatives from across the galaxy waited to hear what terms humanity would demand from their defeated enemies. The Council's surrender message had reached Earth within hours of their fleet's capture. For the first time in galactic history, the ruling powers had requested negotiations from a position of complete weakness. They acknowledged human military superiority and asked what conditions would be required to prevent total war. Carter's response had surprised everyone, including her own military advisors. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, she had invited all galactic species to participate in founding a new form of government based on equality and cooperation. The invitation extended not just to Council members but to every species that had been denied representation under the old system. The Great Chamber had been hastily modified to accommodate beings of vastly different physiologies. Atmospheric zones allowed creatures that breathed different gases to participate safely. Gravity fields were adjusted for species that required different levels of physical support. Translation systems worked in real time to convert thoughts and concepts between hundreds of different forms of communication. Commander Jake Morrison, now serving as Earth's first galactic ambassador, had spent the last 3 days meeting with representatives from dozens of species. Many of them were minor civilizations that had been forced to accept council authority without ever having a voice in galactic affairs. Their gratitude for humanity's invitation was obvious and genuine. The meeting began with President Carter addressing the assembled delegates. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy to billions of beings who had never been allowed to participate in their own governance. She explained that humanity had not fought for the right to replace the Council as galactic rulers, but to establish a system where no single species could dominate all others. Dr. Amy Rodriguez presented the technical revelations that had made human victory possible. She explained how crashed alien probes had provided the foundation for accelerated technological development. Every advance had been shared freely among human scientists and engineers, creating a collaborative approach that multiplied their capabilities. Far beyond what any single group could achieve, the aliens listened in stunned silence as Rodriguez described weapons that could manipulate time itself and defensive systems that drew power from the fundamental forces of the universe. She made it clear that humanity had deliberately revealed only a fraction of their true capabilities during the recent conflict. The demonstration of force had been carefully calculated to prove human strength without causing unnecessary destruction. Admiral Ben Clark took the stage to address military concerns. He revealed that Earth had possessed the ability to destroy the entire Council fleet within the first minute of combat but had chosen precision over devastation. Human military doctrine was built around the principle that overwhelming force should be used to end conflicts quickly while minimizing casualties on both sides. The revelation that humanity could have annihilated their enemies but chose not to send shockwaves through the alien delegates. Species that had lived under Council rule for centuries began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A militarily superior civilization was voluntarily limiting its own power in service of a larger principle. General Rick Hayes outlined the proposed structure of the new Galactic Federation. Instead of a ruling council that made decisions for everyone else, the Federation would operate on principles of proportional representation and universal rights. Every species would have a voice in decisions that affected them. No civilization would be forced to accept technology restrictions or territorial limitations imposed by others. The artificial intelligence Nexus 7, speaking for the first time as a free entity rather than a council tool, expressed amazement at human political concepts. It had analyzed thousands of galactic civilizations and found that every successful species eventually established dominance hierarchies based on military or technological superiority. Humans were proposing something that had never been attempted on a galactic scale. Colonel Don Murphy revealed the extent of human intelligence penetration into alien societies. For decades, human agents using advanced disguise technology had lived among dozens of different species, studying their cultures and learning their languages. The information gathered had been used not for conquest, but to understand how different civilizations could work together peacefully. The most shocking revelation came when President Carter explained that humanity's preparation for galactic contact had begun in the 1940s. Every alien probe that had approached Earth had been detected, studied, and allowed to gather carefully selected information. The process had taken over 50 years of patient planning and technological development. Dr. Rodriguez demonstrated the consciousness transfer technology that had allowed human pilots to control multiple ships simultaneously. She explained that the system worked by taking advantage of unique properties of human neural architecture that made their minds more adaptable than those of other species. Humans could literally think like aliens while maintaining their own identity and decision-making capability. Admiral Korath of the Vorthak was among the first alien leaders to formally accept the new Federation structure. His crystal form had regained much of its brightness as he acknowledged that the old system had become rigid and oppressive over the centuries. The Council had started with good intentions but had gradually transformed into the very kind of tyranny it had originally opposed. Commander Zekth surprised everyone by announcing that his insectoid species would also join the Federation. He explained that his people had grown tired of enforcing Council will through military action. The prospect of using their organizational abilities to build something positive rather than maintain control through fear appealed to younger generations of his species. The energy being flux projected complex emotions into the minds of all present, as it described the loneliness of existing as pure thought without physical form. The new Federation's emphasis on cooperation, rather than domination, offered possibilities for connection that had been impossible under the rigid hierarchy of Council rule. 6 months later, President Carter stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's gift to the new Galactic Federation. The massive space station served as the Federation's capital, providing a neutral meeting ground where representatives from hundreds of species could work together on common challenges. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of civilizations docked at the station's ports. Human vessels worked alongside alien craft to explore new regions of space and establish contact with previously unknown species. The Federation's first priority was reaching out to civilizations that had been overlooked or suppressed by the old Council system. Admiral Clark's new position as commander of the Federation Defense Force had proven popular with former Council military personnel. Instead of enforcing the will of a ruling elite, they now protected developing civilizations from exploitation and helped resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than conquest. Many alien officers reported that their new duties were far more satisfying than their previous roles. Dr. Rodriguez's technology sharing initiative had revolutionized scientific development across the galaxy. Advanced knowledge that had been restricted to Council members was now freely available to any species willing to use it responsibly. The collaborative approach that had made human technological development so successful was being applied on a galactic scale. Carter watched a group of children from a dozen different species playing together in the station's central park. Human children laughed alongside young aliens whose biology made them barely recognizable as living beings. The artificial gravity field had been adjusted to accommodate creatures that had evolved on worlds with vastly different conditions. The sight reminded her of the choice humanity had made 50 years ago when they first detected alien signals. They could have announced the discovery and waited to see what would happen. Instead, they had chosen to prepare for the possibility that contact might not go as hoped. That preparation had saved not just human freedom but had created the opportunity to build something better than what existed before. The Council had predicted human defeat based on what they could observe and measure. They had failed to account for human determination, creativity, and refusal to accept limitations imposed by others. The war had ended before noon, but the real victory was still being built, one relationship, one treaty, and one cooperative project at a time. As Carter prepared to return to Earth for her final report to Congress before retiring, she reflected on the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. Superior technology was meaningless without the wisdom to use it responsibly. True strength came not from the ability to dominate others, but from the choice to lift everyone up together. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun.